All right, we all have been hearing this talking point. What that African Americans, so-called African Americans, have 24 on average, 24% European ancestry. And they're talking about almost everybody has some type of European ancestry mix. Now, AI will tell you that it's an oversimplification and that each person is varies greatly from person to person. Somewhere it says it down there. But either way, my bad, I forgot where I left off. I had to go get a source. But this is the actual, hold on. When you Google it about having 20% ancestry, you'll get multiple different results. Now notice you have science.org reporting on it. You have 23andMe reporting on it. You have one .gov source, which is the NIH, that reported on it. They're all talking about it. NPS Mag, whatever the hell that is. You also have multiple videos of people reporting, re-reporting somebody's work because somebody had to come up with this number. And everybody's just regurgitating it, which is how propaganda works. Stick with me soon. I'm going to show you how by this document, we're going to show that that is completely false. But going back, when you look in, this is science.org, they're reciting 23andMe's article about it. So science.org is just repeating 23andMe's claim. So who is 23andMe getting their information from? And you would think that they're getting their information from the thousands of African Americans they've tested with their database, but that's not what they're getting that information from. In fact, they don't show. They just say, hey, it's no secret that Europeans, African Americans have European ancestry, 20 to 25%. It's no secret. Just go with it, right? And then it says, for anyone still naive, if you don't believe us, okay, instead of us looking at all the spit data and actually reporting on that, which is already just for entertainment purposes anyway, we're going to refer that you go to Skip Gates' article about Michelle Obama's ancestry. If you don't believe it, it's one more collaboration or corroboration that social category of the white and black are those blah 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 reports, whatever. So I said, okay, before I go to that article, let me read a little bit more down. And looking at this, it says that the mixing happened over 200 years ago or more. 2020, or let's say this article came out in 2011, 1911, 1811. We're going to look at an old census document. 1811 would be around here, and we're going to see what we find. But they're going with the story of it happened 200 years ago or more or so, and it happened because of exploitation and that R word, propaganda, because you can't prove ours happened. That's just people saying it happened because you think that you was a slave and you think that since he was property that it must have just happened to everybody, because why not, right? That should definitely happen. No, you can't say that, because and then explaining that to be the reason why we're here. And I know that that's what people say because people tell us that on panels and they'll laugh and be like, ha ha ha, you all were great. Even Tariq Nasheed sits there with this talking point saying, y'all know all of that graping that was going on those plantations, right? So blah blah blah, Massa had his hands all in us. Okay, so when I go over to the Lewis Gates article that they sent a link to, read mostly through it, he doesn't even cite where he got the information. I don't know if he looked at the NIH study. He talked about talking to his geneticist buddies, and his geneticist buddies negated that the fact that we had hardly any Indian blood, but they definitely talk about us having this European and an African whatever. So when you actually go to the actual study from the NIH.gov website, should say it above, this is the study, okay? And coming down in said study, they tell you that we studied the genetic ancestry of 5,269 self-described African Americans. Okay, so let's get this straight. These people can just self-describe themselves. They had more goddamn Latinos as part of the study than us, and there's more of us. So that doesn't even make sense. That should already have your ears ringing there. But, and also look how many Europeans they tested. But okay, you can only get your hands on this many of us because we ain't putting our shit out there like that. But again, okay, they said this would have happened 200 years ago. Here we are at the slave population records for 1790 to 1850. Now, this is a prominent time as prior to here, prior to here, you would have had slavery. Actually, people coming from boats, from African boats, all the way up into here, supposedly, okay? And then from here on, nobody came from Africa at all, but because the importation of slavery was banned in 1808. So all of these people, whatever, okay? Well, on this document, it tells you how many people are mulattoes all through those years. You know what that means? That 200-year ago history that they're claiming from when people would have been mixed with so-called white folks in mass would mean that we should have a hell of a lot of mulattoes 200 years ago, right? Damn near everybody in this fucking document should be a mulatto, right? If the genetics is correct. Because we can trace our ancestry past 1870. We all know that. And we can trace it well before 1872. Many of us have. I have. I'm in the 1700s, early 1700s on many of my people, and early 1800s on most others. But right here, you see where it says blacks and mulattoes? Well, you'll come down. These are the totals. Those are talking about, that separates them. This is the totals from those numbers. 3.2 million. Well, this is just the slaves. So, no, it says slaves and free. I'm sorry. So 3.2 million people were 100% black. And in fact, OHF keeps bringing this up, wanting to stand on, hey, these people are either black or unmixed African descent. So even if you want to believe it, I don't believe the African part because these people weren't labeled as Africans on these documents. They only called it that in 1860 on this document. But regardless of that, it says that these people who are in this black category are of a unmixed descent. Even if you go with the Africa, right? Who's lying? We have the census takers who's reading the census data from the prior years that labeled people based upon looking at them at the time and saying, you look like you don't have any mixture in you, you're black. Or mulattoes of 400 and something thousand, you look like you have some kind of something going on. White, Spaniard, whatever, one of them whites, British, English, Spanish, one of them. Let me mark you down as this mulatto. That's what this category is. And some mulattoes are mixed Indian tribes. You could be one Indian tribe like a Choctaw mixed with a Shinnecock. That's a whole nother story. But regardless of that, what we should see is all African Americans have some type of European ancestry. What you should see in this document is all of these people under this mulatto category. Because they don't mix later into tons of mulattoes. And you barely even had 10% of the people even being labeled as a mulatto. A little over 10%. 400 some thousand out of 3.2 million. Okay? These people be playing with you. And they know that this document exists. The geneticists and people like Henry Louis fucking weirdo Gates, he knows these documents exist. He has to trace people using these census records. So he should see a significant amount of mulattoes on all of these census records. But instead of saying, hey, you know what? Out of all these records, I didn't really see any mulattoes except for like one or two out of the 400 through 300, 400 people in your family tree. But you have 20% European ancestry. Yeah. And there was a couple of white tea folks that raped one person maybe back in the day. And from that, all the people in your line now are 20% admixed. Y'all be believing this stuff, man. And you don't want to have discernment. I'm going to teach y'all. They be playing.